It's John from White Wizzard. I wanted to talk about something that really affected me very deeply today, and that was the passing of Scorpions bass player Francis Buchholz of the Scorpions. He was a huge influence on me, and I think he's the greatest bass player nobody ever talks about. I mean, he was such a good player, and I really wanted to kind of pay tribute to him and just what an influence he had on me as a bass player growing up. He never gets mentioned among all of the great bass players. You know, there's always constantly Geddy Lee and Steve Harris and John Paul Jones and, Geezer Butler, even Pete Way and Bob Daisley. They all get mentioned a lot more than Francis. And Francis was an absolute monster bass player that I think was also, humble enough to understand what the Scorpions were trying to accomplish as songwriters to conquer the charts. And he scaled his bass playing down over the years to really serve the song. And I think that's why people don't remember him that much. But even his Serve the Song bass lines were genius and incredible, and they just don't get talked about enough. But if you go back into the Scorpions' history, if you go back to the early records, his bass playing was actually pretty progressive. Like, one song I always come back to is a song called Longing for Fire. That's on In Trance. And it's a fantastic bass line. It's like super Geddy Lee. It's like really melodic and really cool, great tone. And he does a lot of really good melodic stuff on those early Scorpions records. Even on Nightlights, the song that ends that record, he does this great thing underneath Uli Roth's incredible melodic guitar stuff he's doing. I always felt like him and Uli had a really good progressive kind of connection. He could have easily followed Uli into that world, but he stayed and he helped create the Scorpions kind of US conquering sound from Love Drive On that was very different from their first albums with Uli Roth, which were much more progressive, psychedelic, and for my money, some of the best records ever made. Like, I've always told people always say, it would be like your fantasy, of any band you could have been in. Like, you could go back in time and play bass in any band in history. I would say without hesitation, the Scorpions. Like, and I've always said that. Like, literally, they had two incredible eras, and they're both equally as valid and amazing. The Uli Roth era was just otherworldly, this great mix of incredible songwriting still, but also fearlessness to be progressive, to be dark, to be unashamed in how melodic you were. So much feeling. Young Klaus, his emotion in his vocals. He's such a melodic singer. Also underappreciated. Klaus is a top 3 for me, all-timer. What a band that early Scorpions band was. It never gets talked about enough. Like, it's got a cult following, but it should be talked about at the same level of all the greatest bands in history. I think it's as great as Deep Purple, Zeppelin, Rush. Go down the list, man. Like, Uli Roth Scorpions for me is the highest level of musicianship and songwriting and that great balance of light and shade and otherworldliness. And then, that second era where they refined everything and they wrote incredible radio songs that were still complex enough to respect them, but at the same time were just simple enough that the average person could just get into them. Everybody was into the Scorpions in the early 80s. When I was a kid, man, I mean, Blackout and Love It for Sting were like the albums, man. Like, those hits from those records were everywhere. And their sense of songwriting, of course, is amazing, but Francis gets lost, in the, I guess, the normal listener's ear, but he's there everywhere, and he's so genius at how he approached his bass lines, even in that era of the Scorpions. So I always admired his willingness to be humble, because I couldn't do that. I had to start my own band as a bass player because I wanted to be, Geddy Lee and Steve, all those guys, that was my influences. I wanted to be a really busy lead forward bass player. I wanted the bass to be a very lead instrument in my band. and that's part of what my motivation was. But I always appreciated what Francis did there, because I know Francis could have been a much more, he was way better than people give him credit for. And you can hear it on those early records. He was an absolute badass. And he was an incredible musician. And it's, you know, the Scorpions were lucky to have him. And even though he doesn't get talked about enough, I feel like it was a huge importance that he was a part of their legacy. And, you know, just what a band, what a life. You know, everyone's getting older now, and life's such a short run. We're seeing just how fast it is as we see, you know, rock music and all of our heroes starting to go. And it's just, I wanted to post something because I just feel like Francis never gets talked about, man. Like, I just don't understand why he's not more revered as a bass player. I mean, the Scorpions in general, especially that era with Uli, I don't understand why that's not more revered as well. But, like, you know, they just, you know, back during Uli, they still were kind of a smaller band. They didn't really break till Love Drive and beyond. So, you know, I guess it's a cult following for those records. Even though they were huge in Japan, because, you know, the Japanese know great music. And, of course, they blew up there and did Tokyo tapes, right? But just, you know, nothing but love to the memory of Francis, the greatness that was the Scorpions, and what a band. I just absolutely love that band and love both of those eras. I think their run of about 8 or 9 records, from, you know, Fly to the Rainbow through, you know, Love at First Sting especially, is one of the great runs of records ever done by any bands, from Zeppelin to whatever, go down the list. When you factor in all of the different things, from songwriting quality to what they accomplished, their rise up to Worldwide Live in the mid '80s was just a special thing. And it's great to go back and listen to that. I highly recommend everybody go back, listen to those Scorpions records, and just focus in on Francis's bass playing and appreciate how great he was. And massive loss, in my opinion, in the music world. And I hope everybody rediscovers him and rediscovers again all those great songs that he was on. And much love and Godspeed to Francis. And long live the Scorpions, man.